Thank you. Well, so I mean, I was going to, part of this was an introduction, but obviously Robin told you everything about me, social security number, all that stuff, so no need to go too much. Nevertheless, I'm Rich Arnold. I went to Kean. I graduated here in 2008. So when I graduated, I first went into publishing, and it took about a year of publishing to realize I didn't want to do publishing anymore. And from there, it took me a little while to finally get into digital design. I ended up at Huge for 2 years, and then at Free Association, which is another product design studio in Brooklyn, and then finally now at Vine. It's interesting, like I kind of like always just like back into like all these different jobs. I sort of like, find out what they are when I get there kind of thing. I was like, at first, like I really wanted to get into digital design. I landed at Huge, and like I love my time at Huge, but they're more of like they do a lot of like marketing work, and to me, like I didn't know there was something outside of marketing work until I got to Free Association. When I got to FA is when I learned about product design and what human-centered design process is and what it means to create things that people actually use rather than, here's a marketing site for these headphones, and when these headphones are old, it goes away and you never see it again. I wanted to talk really quickly about just in general, like how totally stoked I am to be in this industry today. Like to paraphrase Richard Nixon, if you could ask me to be any place or in any job at any time, I'd say the design industry 2015. Like now is the time, this is the place to be. Throughout time, like we've sort of like started climbing Maslow's hierarchy of needs. For people who know, like Maslow's hierarchy is there's these like 5 levels, and picture it as a pyramid. And the bottom 4 levels are sort of things that people need to, you need to meet these minimum requirements. So physiological needs, safety, you need to feel safe, you need to feel loved, and then esteem is the 4th one, you feel good about yourself. And the 5th level is self-actualization, being your best self kind of thing. And more than ever, a large portion of the population has sort of reached that level where they've reached this point where like they can be great at something and then like really contribute to the people who are like struggling to meet the bottom 4 needs there. And I suppose that's sort of the biggest thing. Like, I'll talk through, there's 1 project in here I worked on and 2 that are done by, 1 by IDEO, 1 by Design That Matters. And both of them really solve, like, are attempting to solve real problems in the world. So I look at this term, and this is like, you can toss this around like pivot and disrupt and all those other words that you can throw into an interview and make it sound like, you're on the cutting edge of things. But it's a little disconcerting to me that human-centered design is even a term, I talked to my wife about this, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to do a talk on human-centered design. And she was like, well, isn't that just design? And I was like, yeah, you think. But that's not always the way things go. Design for a long time has been talking about having its seat at the table, and now it's there. And more than ever, we're being asked to be like the cornerstone of a company. And the problem is, and sometimes we, rather than like trying to actually solve a problem, we look at something and say, we get a site and we go, what's the coolest way to make this carousel work? Or like, what's like the dopest way this screen could come in? And it's like, that's not the point. Like, that's not what we're trying to do. I think the problem with that is, and this is something that I thought for a long time just only affected students. I knew it affected me when I was a student, but I get the sense that it's more pervasive, is this idea that like, you're an artist, and you sort of just like game the system and figure out a way to like be an artist and make money. So let's just be very clear about this. You are not a goddamn artist. And I'm not even here to make the argument that art is good and design is good, they're just different. Design is better than art. Design is fucking better than art. Because art is about me. Go ahead, yeah. The problem is like art is about me. Art is like, how do I feel? Like, what do I want to communicate with you? And like, how does that manifest itself? And design is about you. Design is like, what do you feel? Are you nervous? Are you excited? Are you scared? Are you delighted? Things like that. What do you need communicated to you? Are you confused? Like, can we help you get through this a little better? Do you need to know what to do next? Like, if you're parking your car, like you think about if you're like looking at parking signs in New York City, like, I need you to communicate something to me through design. That's actually important to me. I need to know. Design is like trying to improve things in people's lives, which is important. It's more important than art. And to illustrate this, so this is Bird in Space by Brian Cousy. This is one of my favorite things to look at on the face of the fucking earth. I love this thing. I could go to any museum, and if I see this, I'll just be like, the rest of you just keep on going, and I'm gonna chill out here for like 20 minutes and just look at this really pretty thing, and I love it. It's my favorite thing in the world. By comparison, this is Terminal 5 at JFK. It used to be known as the TWA Flight Center. This was designed, at least the exterior, by Eero Saarinen. And I think this is every bit as beautiful as Bird in Space. This thing is fucking gorgeous. I love looking at this thing. But the thing that makes it better is like millions of people walk through here every year. Like they're trying to get to places where like it's actually serving a purpose. It's better than Bird in Space. Like it's a thing that you can use. And it plays an important role in the lives of like any New Yorker who has to get anywhere. And so I think like to that point, I think design is too important to be left only to designers. And this is like sort of like one of the cornerstone principles of like what it means to be, to have a human-centered design process. We should make design available to the process to as many people as possible. And a portion of that means losing your ego, which is something I personally struggle with. There's this term that people use, T-shaped people. I'm sure most people have heard, but essentially it's you want people with breadth and depth, people who know a little bit about a lot of things and a lot about one thing. And the reality is like most people are T-shaped in some way. It's just like their vertical is just not design, and that's fine. But they can contribute to what you need to like learn to do your job better. And in a lot of like people in a lot of places, it's like there's like the classic, ad agency model, which is like there's the creative, and there's everyone else, and that doesn't fly with me, and that ends up you having this siloed sort of thing, sort of creates friction between people, and you end up with, if you talk to any designer, they have their horror stories like, oh, dev killed this, or my client didn't like my best ideas, and it's like, well, did you involve development when you were planning this? Were they in the meetings with you? Did they could they have helped solve this with you? Did you incorporate your clients? Like, the thing is, at the end of the day, people don't give a shit why something sucks. They just care that it sucks. Like, unless you're gonna jump out of whatever app you build and just be like, hey man, this used to be better. Now it's not. It doesn't matter. So it sort of like again, like there's like the creative and the not. And David Kelly, who's the CEO of IDEO, talks in his book Creative Confidence. Talks about like going to a group of kids, and like if you go to a group of children and say, hey, who here is creative? Every hand goes up. Every kid thinks they're creative, and at some point we just like hammer this out of people. Like they do something and we go, yeah, it's good, but this kid's an artist. He's a little better than you, and you go, and they just opt out, and they're going, well, I guess I'm not creative. I'll go be an accountant and put numbers in a box. And we have to stop doing that. So I personally, I have a lot of experiences with Free Association, bringing in clients and working with them to through sketching sessions and things like that. And you would not believe these adults who make 6-7 figure salaries, and they just get so you could see their chest tighten up, they just can't deal with the fact that they have to sit down and draw a picture that no one cares about. Eventually you get to start talking through it, but once they get going and they open up to this process, they really help contribute, because the reality is if it's a client, they know their product better than we will ever be able to know it in the small amount of time that our paths intersect. And if it's a user, they know their problems better than we could ever possibly understand by just sitting in a room and sort of talking about these things. And that sort of thing is if we're not solving someone's problem, then we're not being designers. So that means having a holistic understanding of the problem you're trying to solve, how it will be used. And the thing is, you think you know what someone's problem is, but you don't until you actually talk to them. And I noticed this a lot, this idea of where art deviates from design and the example of design not solving a problem with weather applications all the time. So I went through and I spent literally less than 5 minutes on Dribble and just searched for a weather application. And I just pulled out a couple highlights here, and these are all very pretty. Your mileage with them may vary, but like they're all incredibly nice looking. They, tell you the weather. There's a number on them, and they tell you if the sun's out, and that's fine. But the problem is that like nothing's actually solved the problem for me. This solves the fucking problem for me. My problem wasn't that like the number wasn't pretty enough when I opened up my weather application. The problem was that I don't check my weather application every day, and so I walk outside and it's like pouring rain 5 minutes into my commute. I need to know without like just be told like it's going to rain, grab an umbrella. Oh, okay, cool, thanks. That's what I needed to know. These like sort of these things like of this has always been like an element in great design. The guy that everyone goes nuts for is, or the company that everyone goes nuts for is Everything by Braun. This is the KSM coffee grinder by Reinhold Weiss in 1967. I'm going to take this off the screen now. It's a coffee grinder. Everybody in this room knows how to use that. It was on screen for less than 3 seconds, right? I'll put it back up. All you do is you put the coffee grounds up top, you press the one fucking button, and you move on with your life. That's it. So like what was taken into consideration when we was building this was like, I'm just getting up in the morning, I just want my coffee. I want to get from coffee beans to coffee as quickly as possible. And I don't want 12 settings. I don't want this like big thing. I just need to get this to this, just get out of my way. And the great thing is there is only one way to use this. You cannot possibly screw it up. The right way to use it is the only way to use it. And that is and this is a foundational thing in any great design. The only way to use the iPhone is the right way to use it. You press any button and it comes on. And there's a thing that says slide. Okay, good, got it. You put an iPhone in front of a toddler and they will get into it. The next thing I want to talk about is sort of like there's like 3 major steps in like the human-centered design process. So I wanted to run through those with you guys real quick. The first thing is identify your design challenges. It's like I was saying before, like you really have to start with a problem. A lot of times we like to phrase these as how might we questions. When you phrase it as how might we, it sort of implies that there's a solution to it. So it's like, how might we improve taking the bus from Wall Street to Flatiron. You really try and zero in on like what are the pains that we're trying to remedy for our users, and like ideally this is a sentence or two, and it shouldn't be something tactical. So like a lot of times in agencies I've had people come to me and go like, oh, we need this feature. Well, that's not. You're skipping ahead. Like it's too narrow and getting ahead of itself. A feature is a solution. Like I'll come up with the we'll come up with the feature. Tell me the problem. I need to know what to fix. Sort of going down this path is how you end up with faster horses rather than a car. It's like if you tell me you want to go fast, if like we were still like horse and carriages and they were like, tell me to go faster, I'd be like, build a faster horse. In reality, you've closed the opportunity for a car, sort of paraphrasing on Henry Ford. Another thing I like to do if it's a particularly big company, I like to do what I call a pre-mortem. A lot of times if it's like a bigger company, like there's this element of like not being a team player, so they don't want to say there's something wrong with the project they're bringing to you. So you sit down with these people and you force them to say like, all right, it's a year from now, this project launched, it went down in a blaze of glory, why did it fail? And you make them come to like face the fact that there are potential problems here, and you sort of alleviate this issue of them being the standout for pointing out something's not going to work. And then you can work with them to like, to design around that problem. So once you identify your design challenges, again, like maybe like a sentence or two, you should keep this in every design review. It should be something you constantly reference. If you are ever not solving this, then you need to revisit this and say, where did we go wrong here? The most important part is empathizing with the people you're designing for. So problem solving for design is based on people's needs, wants, and context. And the big thing is you have to look at design not as a craft, but as a process. And it's a process, not a science, and it's not art, it's based on empathy. It's about understanding what they need from you. So you find your users, And you just go talk to them. And like, this could mean like, you know, in some cases like going, like shadowing them for a day, or just bringing people in your office and giving them $20 and talking about like, what are the problems with this thing they're trying to use, and like, understand it. So like, talking through like, when they're trying to do this, do they have kids yelling in the background? Are they pressed for time? Are they multitasking? Like, these things sort of play into like what you need from them, or what they need from you, I should say. And from there, you can build an experience map. You could take like Post-it notes, build out the entire experience, like all the main points along the way, and what the user's feeling along all those points, what they need to accomplish, and then try how to make every one of those points better than they were before. This like is the part that gets skipped in most in agencies that I think is critical to coming up with better solutions. They get a lot of times you have a lot of people who get paid the most to sit around and talk about what the solution is. And I don't know any other industry where that happens, where like people with no context sit around and try and discuss solutions for other things. Like, that doesn't happen anywhere else, as far as I know. And the last thing is test, learn, iterate. So you should go into prototyping as quickly as possible. You should fail your ass off. You should be failing as often as possible. You can, so even like early on in the process, you could do paper prototyping, anything to get something in front of somebody as quickly as possible. You could, once you get into any visuals, there's like things like Flinto, Pixate, Origami. You can work with Dev to do prototypes later on. But the point is, like, get this shit in front of people as soon as possible, and it doesn't have to look good. And probably the worse it looks, the better, because I find that if you put something nice in front of somebody, even if it sucks, they're like, well, I better be nice about this because it's already made, so I can't really change it now. And iterating is huge. So like, you get in front of somebody and then you fix it again and again and again and again, and get the real products out there. And this is what produces better work. There's this book called Art and Fear. It's by David Bales and Ted Orlin. There's this anecdote in it of a ceramics teacher who says he has like a ceramics class, and he divides the class in half and says, half of you will be graded on the quantity of pots you make. We're going to take all the pots that you make at the end of the year, we're going to put them on a scale and weigh them, 50 pounds is an A, 40 pounds is a B, whatever. And the other half of the class only has to build one pot, but it has to be great to get an A. It has to be the perfect pot. And what they found was that the side of the class that was told to make quantity actually made the better pot too, because they were just like, they were trying things and failing and learning from them and trying again and failing and making the next one. And the people who were sat down and tried to make the one perfect pot were so paralyzed by perfection that they just sat around and they just like theorized about like, well, what's the perfect pot? And then when they come up with it, they got one, and it's fine, and it's not perfect, and that's all they had to show for it. So get it out there and break it and make it and do it again. So some of the things that I want to talk about that are fantastic examples of human-centered design and process. This first one is one by IDEO. It's the Embrace Infant Warmer. Not by IDEO, it's by the Stanford D School, run by David Kelly, who owns IDEO. So the Stanford D School is design school at Stanford. They have students like out there, like it's a multidisciplinary department, and they are trying to solve real-world problems. And one that they were trying to solve was this issue of low birth weight globally. So 1.8 million infants die every year from low birth weight. And initially the goal was to build a low-cost incubator, so it's complications from not being able to keep the child warm. So like, okay, fine, build a low-cost incubator, we could do that. And they went to Nepal to go look at the incubators they had, and they found that they had incubators, and that they were just all empty, because the children were being born like out in the fields, like in the country, and they can't get to the hospital. So that completely changes. Like, that's something you couldn't possibly know without trying to understand like what you're really trying to solve. So not only did they need to create a low-cost incubator, they needed to create one that could be operated locally, that was easy to use, intuitive, could function without electricity. Like this is like wildly different than what they had to walk in thinking. So they came up with this thing, which is the Embrace Incubator. It's essentially like this sleeping bag they came up with that's filled with like a phase change material. Think about like what's inside like an ice pack essentially. And you would, it costs about like $20 to make it. You dunk it in boiling water, and then you take it out, and it's at a certain temperature, and you stick the baby in it, and it keeps them warm for like 4 hours. The way you heat it up again is you put it in boiling water again. Like, it's a brilliant design. But something they even learned just from getting in front of people, like they built this prototype, and initially they had it so that they put a thermometer on it, and they said you have to heat it to 37 degrees Celsius. And what they found was that the mothers there were a little more wary of Western medicine, and so they were like, well, 37 sounds a little aggressive. When we do 33 degrees Celsius, right? And that doesn't work. So that's something you couldn't possibly know unless they were testing this and iterating it and putting it in front of people. So they took the thermometer off, and they just made it an okay signal. They made it binary. Either it's good or it's not. So this is that's how you solve, this is how them solving real world problems by getting in front of someone and understanding these challenges as they arise. One I personally worked on was a banking app for teens. This is something we worked on at Free Association. So it was targeted towards 13 to 18-year-olds, really 13 to 15-year-olds, because once you get around 17 or 18, you have a job. Initially when we went into it, we were thinking it would have to have the standard requirements, it needs to show account balances, it needs to transfer money. And so if we went down that road, we would have probably ended up with something like this, right? Which is fine. But that doesn't really speak to what teenagers need in this app. This is not really made for them. And so we had to we sat down and we conducted interviews with a bunch of teenagers, and we found out a lot of things about them. We found out a problem is that they get paid in cash because they get paid in allowance. So that's a problem because if you want to order something online, you can't pay in cash. And they don't understand if you throw a bunch of dollar values at them. They just need to know, what they want to know is what is the amount of money that I can spend right now? They want to be able to save. So some of the anecdotes we found was kids who want to save for a bigger purchase and then essentially have to trick themselves into not spending money. We found one girl who she would stick money in an envelope and write on what it was for and then hide it under her bed and just hope she remembered that it was there at some point. We've had another guy who he kept a piece of paper in his wallet and he could spend from one side and not the other, which a friend of mine went to Atlantic City with the same thought after he got his paycheck and ended up losing a couple $100. Granted, he's a grown man and an imbecile, but clearly this is a process that could go wrong very easily. So they also needed to be able to send money to their friends, hey, we went to a diner together, give me $5, and I'll cover it. And they needed to be able to request money when they needed to. So we had to sort of go back and reassess, what does our app really need to do? So here's the obligatory picture of sketches happening. These are a dime or a dozen. And so we worked really closely with the team across disciplines, and we came up with a couple of solutions. We sketched with them. We did a persona building exercise, so we built out this persona, Jessica, and her whole backstory, who she hangs out with, where does she go, this is what she needs money for, really try and create this character, this person that we're trying to empathize with, and we talk about it, it's not what would the user do, it's what does Jessica need to do here, and it really changes the way you consider the problems in front of you. And we looked at all the points in the process, like we were saying before, so anything from how do you ask your parents to get you the app? If you're 13 years old, you need to be able to talk to your parent and say hey, I need you to put my social security number into this thing. It's not an easy conversation to have. Then saving money, and then how do you spend it in a store? So we had to sit back and say, okay, how do we make all those points spectacular? So this is what we came up with. When you land, this is what you see. This is the number of dollars that you have. That's all you fucking need to know most of the time. Only thing that matters. If you swipe to the right, you can see all the things that you're saving for. So those things are there. You don't have to worry about them. They don't get mixed up with this number. If you pull up, you can see your transaction history, but that stuff is hidden. You only need to know about it if it's there. You don't need to be confronted with 50 purchases of hey, here's you spend $5 here, $3 here, $2 here. And then so you need, this is great, and you also need a frictionless way to do a lot of other things, as it turns out. So this is sort of more of the full breadth of the app. You need to be able to request money from your parents. So this was a big thing. Is they're out at the mall because that's what you do when you're 14 years old, and you find some shirt that you want, it's like a perfectly reasonable purchase to make. You know the money on you, but you can't just be like, yo, Ma, hit me up with $15. Like, so we include this thing. Is that not how people talk to their parents? So we include this thing, like you can see in the bottom screen, include a note. So you could request $15, and then you include a note and take a picture and say, like, hey, I'm trying to get this shirt. Can you give me $15 for it? And then she can just send you the money right away. Because they needed to be able to spend it in a store, we knew we had to give them a card, which is like, you know, which is mission critical. They needed to be able to shop with it, so we included this ability to, like, we wanted to teach them about, like, being able to shop responsibly, so we tried to include coupons, things like that, offers, like, and that's also, like, a benefit that this company could partner with some of their retailers that, like, sort of resonate with them. And then, again, like, something like this screen on the bottom right, where you could send and request money, like, it's just the same screen. It's one screen to send and request. You put in a number, and you hit send or request. That's it. There's one way to use it. You need to know how much you want and if it's going or coming, and that's all you need to know about it. The last one I wanted to talk about was the Firefly Phototherapy machine. So this is another, like, sort of third world kind of one. This was designed by Design That Matters. And so they're trying to tackle jaundice in children in developing countries. And they're, like, you know, 2/3 of newborns around the world have jaundice or suffer from jaundice when they're younger. It results in a 6 to 10% mortality rate in newborns. And the thing is, like, there's a super simple solution to this. You shine blue light on them. That's how you cure jaundice. It's the simplest thing in the world. The problem is that, like, this is what a typical phototherapy device looks like. And how it's supposed to work is you take, like, one bassinet, you put it underneath it, you put the light on, and that's that. However, when you move this to the developing world, where training isn't available and facilities are overcrowded, you get things where they put multiple babies under it at the same time, or where the people using them aren't totally familiar with how to use it, so there's too many settings. Some doctors prefer low intensity to preserve the bulb, which isn't a great reason to make that decision. Some prefer higher intensity for severe cases. Some units offer a white observation light, which is just a light. And there was one person they talked to who said, yeah, this is a white light therapy machine, when she didn't realize she had it on observation mode and that child was not receiving any therapy whatsoever. So, like, again, this is, like, a mission critical thing of, like, having building things so that the only way to use it is the right way to use it. There's a lot of wrong ways to use this thing, obviously. So you have to sort of look at it again, and the mantra is always, like, you know, there's no dumb users, just dumb products. And in this context, this is a dumb product. So they needed to make something better. So they came up with this, which is the Firefly Phototherapy device. Looking at it now, the right way to use it is the only way to use this thing. You put the baby in, you flick it on, that's it, you're done. But there's, like, there's, you know, a couple, like, brilliant things that they've done. So, like, again, like a single bassinet, you can only fit one baby. That eliminates that possibility. There's only one setting. It's either on or it's off. You can't overdose on light, as it turns out, so that's that. They also found a couple ways to solve for things that they wouldn't have identified if they weren't talking to these people. So one problem they found was that mothers had to go to the neonatal units where they were. And they go there, and there's this, like, their naked newborn child under this, like, blue light. It's fucking horrifying looking. And a lot of times the mothers will try and put, like, a blanket on the baby, which is perfectly fine unless you're trying to shine blue light on them. That doesn't really work. So with this, what they did here, and again, like, this is, you know, dumb users, just dumb products, they built a light into the bottom also. So even if she does, in the unideal scenario, put a blanket over it, he's still receiving treatment. And they also made it so that it's the width so that it could fit next to a mother in bed, so it doesn't have to go anywhere. So she can be there. There's, like, you know, more bonding time. Your child's not taken away from you immediately after being born. You can breastfeed there. Like, you know, it's just a better product in that way, in every way. And again, like, this is something that can only be built if you understood, like, the needs, desires, actions, and pains of the people using it. You couldn't possibly know if you weren't actually going and talking to these people and understanding what they needed from you. So to me, like, this is human-centered design. So I mean, I'll sort of wrap up there and, like, save some time for questions at the end. But in general, I just want to encourage everyone, you know, if you are currently in the industry or if you're, like, soon to be, if at all possible, open up your process, among other people in your studio, among your clients, incorporate people, like make this, you don't have to be, you don't have to be Carmelo Anthony, you could be the Spurs, you can play team ball. You should really try and truly understand your users, really get to know them, understand what they need from you, and really like give a shit about like what you're trying to provide to them. And again, treat design as a process. It's not fucking art, and it is not science, and it's founded in empathy, and that's design. Yeah. I guess it's like more of like in terms of aesthetics, like that does help. I mean, if you think of like Apple is obviously extremely influenced by the Dieter Rams philosophy. I think the big thing is with the stuff that Dieter Rams made is that it's again like it's just so brilliant and simple in its use that you put it in front of somebody 40 years after it's made, 50 years after it's made, and it still is as simple to use as it ever was. Like there's a lot of products you can't say that about. Like if I were to put, a TV or a radio from 1950 in front of you, like it would take me a minute or two to figure out what was going on. But you could put the glass coffin turntable in front of me, and I'd figure it out pretty quick. Exactly. Just put it on top, press the button, and you're done. You want to do life.
One more question? I'm just wondering what you do exactly at Vine, because when you think about these kind of social, I mean, Vine is you post a video and you upload it, and that's it. But I mean, there's probably so much more to it. So just wondering what your specific role, what your part of the process is. Yeah. So a lot of it's like sort of adding new features. There's like sort of those there's two sides. There's the creation side and the consumption side. A lot of times, like so right now, like you get handed a feature that we're trying to create. In many cases, it's either trying to better the experience, like help make it easier to find better content on there. A problem that at least I perceive about Vine from the outside is that people think about it and they think of slapstick comedy, and like that's sort of the pinnacle of creation. And the reality is, until I started working there and I saw like what other people are making, like there is a lot of like really beautiful, amazing artwork that people are making on there, and like you just would never know because you can't find it, and like unless someone tells you about it, and that's not a great way to discover content. So that's a big critical thing. And then making content should be easier. Again, like that, there's forget the statistic, but it's an extremely small percentage of our user base makes a extremely large amount of the posts. And again, they account for an even larger percentage of the loops. And a problem with that is that it's very difficult to make a Vine. So we're working on ways to open that process up, make it easier for you to create great content. Can't really show you now, but there's a really fucking awesome thing coming out in the next month or two. So whenever there's another update, you should check that out.
Fantastic, Rich. So other questions off to the side? Please, round of applause for Rich.